If you're doing hand tool woodwork, you need to sharpen your tools, but what should you sharpen them with? Sandpaper, lapping paste, oil stones, water stones, diamond plates, ceramic stones, or glass stones? Wait a second. Are there actually sharpening stones made out of glass? Like a lot of woodworkers, I got started with an inexpensive honing guide and some wet or dry sandpaper, and it worked great. My tools got really sharp. But this paper is expensive. It wears out fast, and you replace it a lot. So before long, I decided it was time to step up to a set of oil stones. Stones like these are durable, inexpensive, and they do a great job. For years, I was perfectly happy with this setup. But then I started to see a wavy texture on the surface of a lot of my woodwork. And what I realized was that this stone here, the coarse one, had dished out in the middle. Now, a little bit of dish is actually good because that helps you get a nice, gentle camber on the edge of your blades. But if the dish gets too deep, you can't control that curvature anymore. And that starts to affect your work. Of course, you can flatten oil stones. You can use sandpaper or even a flat piece of concrete. I've done it before. It's not that big a deal. But I thought to myself, you know what? I do this for a living. Why should I put up with a sharpening system that requires any flattening, any maintenance at all? So I got rid of my oil stone setup and traded up to these diamond plates. And they're amazing. It's industrial diamonds electroplated to a flat piece of steel. They cut fast and they never need any maintenance. They can't get dished out. And, well, they're honestly a lot different than my oil stones. Because they're perfectly flat, I have to pay much more attention when I'm honing to get that smooth camber that I depend on. These sometimes give me too flat of an edge, and for a while I was getting marks and corners from my blades digging into my work. It was a big adjustment to sharpening on these. And I also don't get quite as fine of an edge as I used to get with my oil stones. My finest diamond plate here is a number 1200, and that's pretty fine, but nowhere near as fine as my white Arkansas stone. And I could upgrade to a number 4000 or 8000 diamond plate, but that would be another $90, and I've already spent about $160 on this setup here. So after all that, did I really upgrade? I don't know, but I sure spent a lot of money. There's one more type of stone that I haven't touched on yet. These are called water stones, and they originated in Japan, but then they've become popular all over the world. Now, water stones and oil stones really aren't that different. They're both abrasive particles compressed together into a brick. That's really it. The difference is how those particles are bonded together. In oil stones, the bond between the particles is very strong, which makes the stones hard and durable, but it also means the abrasive particles can get dull or get clogged up. That's one of the reasons they cut slowly. Water stones have a very weak bond between the abrasive particles, and just by sharpening, you're constantly peeling off old particles and exposing new, fresh, sharp ones. This property is called being friable, and it's what makes water stones work so well. They're very aggressive, they're very fast, and they can handle any type of steel. The downside of being friable is it makes these stones very fragile. They can break or chip if you leave them in water and they freeze. That can ruin them, and they go out of flat very, very quickly. Most people who use water stones need to flatten them between every sharpening, usually using something like a diamond plate. And a lot of these stones need to be kept wet all the time. People just keep them in a tub of water. For me, that has always been a deal breaker. Having a big container of filthy water filled with sharpening stones, that just doesn't go in my workshop. And the constant flattening, I don't like that either. At the same time, water stones are probably the most popular. Most people I know lean towards these because you get an excellent edge and they can be very economical. At the lower end of the spectrum, these are quite cheap and they still work really well. So water stones might be something that you want to consider, even though they haven't worked out for me. The last category of stones is the super high-tech ones. These are usually called ceramic or glass stones, and they're super high tech. They're basically water stones, but bonded together with a very special process that makes the stones harder and more durable while still being super aggressive. Most people I know who try these stones really like them, but I've never tried them because they're quite expensive. They cost as much as diamond plates. So if I wanted to try a set of Shapton or chinois stones, I'd be spending as much as I already spent on the diamond plates, and, well, we saw how that worked out. So you might want to give these a shot, but I'm going to stick with something more economical. If you're just getting started in sharpening, someone is going to tell you that you should try a bunch of different sharpening systems. Figure out which one is right for you. And that is terrible advice. Instead, you should do what Chris Schwartz suggests. Pick one sharpening system and stick with it. Learn the ins and outs. Get good at it. And I agree. I know a bunch of woodworkers, and none of them agree on how to sharpen, but they all have sharp tools, which kind of tells you that all of these systems are sort of the same at the end of the day. They all sharpen tool steel. So the one you pick should be based on things like what you can afford and how big your shop is, and do you want a big tub of water sloshing around. Once you pick a system, a tried and true system, you know that it will work because it's worked for so many other people. It's going to work for you too, as long as you put in the practice. Let's talk about some specific products to get you going. My top choice for sharpening has always been oil stones, and the classic choice in oil stones is the Norton India combination stone. This is a dual-sided artificial stone. It's coarse on one side and medium fine-ish on the other side. Believe it or not, this one stone will get you going in woodworking. Sharpen on the coarse side, sharpen on the medium fine side, and then use a strop, which is just leather charged with buffing compound, and that'll polish and refine your edge. Just those 3 steps will give you a very good edge on most of your tools. Now, as time goes on and you get better at sharpening, you might want to make an even finer and more polished edge. And then you can get into a larger system like the one I've got here. I just took my combination stone and put it in the board, coarse side up like this, and I don't flip it over anymore. I bought a medium fine stone by itself. It was under 20 bucks. And then these 2 stones here are natural stones. And what's great about these is you can often find them used, and often for not a lot of money. I find these at flea markets and yard sales, and sometimes they cost as little as $1 because nobody knows what they are anymore. Because they're so cheap, my collection of natural stones has gotten completely out of hand, but when they cost $1, I can't help buying them. They sharpen so well and they're so dependable. If you can't find these used near you, the company Dan's Whetstones still sells natural Arkansas stones in fine grits. These work wonderfully, but the price fluctuates a lot. Sometimes they're very expensive, sometimes they're very cheap, so you have to watch and buy them at the right time. In the meantime, keep your eye open for used stones around you. You might be surprised. For getting started, all you need is that India stone and a strop. I've got videos specifically on oil stone sharpening, on making a strop, on all of this stuff. I will link to all of these things and these products down in the description. A lot of people choose to sharpen with diamond stones because they cut fast and they require basically no maintenance. There's never any flattening. Diamonds will also sharpen fancy high-tech steels like A2 and PMV 11. These super hard steels can't always be sharpened with oil stones, and so diamonds are the clear choice if you want to use these high-tech alloys. Now, the downside of diamond stones used to be that they were very expensive, but that's changing all the time. The biggest thing to happen recently is manufacturers started coming out with these super thin, ultra cheap stones. All 4 of these stones cost 20 bucks. And they work. They actually work really well. I've sharpened dozens of blades on this set of stones, and they're still going strong. Now, clearly, these aren't going to last forever. They're super cheap, but they will get you going. You can get these in a lot of different configurations on Amazon. There's a 3-stone set, and a 5-stone set, and a 4-stone set. I've done my best to sort through the garbage and just link to the ones that are actually good down in the description. Now, because they're cheap, these are not going to last forever. Probably a few months. And when they're done, you're going to want to step up to something better. When I wanted higher quality diamond stones, I went with DMT. They've been the industry leader in diamond stones for a long time. They make a really thick, really sturdy stone coated with monocrystalline diamonds, which I honestly don't really know what that means, but apparently it's good. You can get a set of 3 and add a strop, and it's a fair bit of money, but you probably won't need to upgrade these for a super long time. Maybe not ever. Water stones are pretty much my least favorite sharpening stone, but I think they're the most popular overall. They're not super expensive and they leave an excellent edge. Now, the place that I think you have to use water stones is if you're using Japanese tools. Japanese tools are specifically designed to be sharpened with water stones. They can cut ultra-hard steels and leave that very fine polished edge that's a requirement for Japanese-style woodworking. Now, you don't see me use Japanese tools on this channel hardly at all, but I own a bunch of them and I practice with them because I'm just interested in different styles of woodwork. Anytime I'm using my Japanese tools, I use this King water stone. It's very popular, pretty inexpensive choice. It's sort of medium grit on one side and ultra fine on the other side, and I use it along with this Trend double-sided diamond plate. It's 400 grit on one side and 1000 grit on the other side. I use the 400 grit to flatten my stone in between sharpenings, and I usually start off my sharpening on the 1000 grit side just to make some quick progress, and then I move over to my water stone to get that final highly polished edge. These two things together will handle a lot of sharpening tasks for Japanese-style woodwork, and you can get both of these at a reasonable price. What's going on with me and my sharpening? Well, I used this oilstone setup for over a decade with no problems, and then for basically no reason, I decided to switch to diamond plates. I spent a ton of money, and I had to relearn sharpening, which cost me a lot of time, and I've decided to go back to my oilstones. I think this is what happens a lot of the time. When you go on some big educational journey, you go on the whole trip only to realize that you never should have left home in the first place. Of course, that's kind of the point of this channel. I try this stuff out and tell you what I find so that you don't have to waste all this time and money. Now, if you're interested about sharpening and steels, I highly recommend Ron Hock's book, The Perfect Edge. Ron owns Hock Tools, and he is an internationally recognized expert in sharpening, metallurgy, and edge tools. The book is excellent. I learned a lot from it. I also got to interview Ron last year as a patron special feature. So if you'd like to hear me and Ron Hock geek out about tool steels for a full hour, go on over to patreon.com/RexKrueger and check out that video and all the other rewards I have for the people who make these videos possible. This video, this one right here, has hundreds of dollars of products in it. I paid full retail for every single one, and I never take sponsorship money, so I can always give you my unbiased opinion. This is only possible because of my patrons. I would go bankrupt without them, and I appreciate them so much. I also really appreciate my viewers. So thanks for watching.